President of the National Assembly of Venezuela, Jorge Rodriguez, detailed the costly operation financed by USAID for the extreme right wing of Venezuela. Palestinian prisoners are being freed after the release of 3 Israeli captives in Gaza under the ceasefire agreement. And Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman denied that Russia was responsible for the drone attack on the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. This Friday, the President of the National Assembly of Venezuela, Jorge Rodriguez, detailed the costly operation financed by USAID for the extreme right wing of Venezuela with the aim of plundering national resources, balkanizing the nation, and contributing to the exodus of numerous citizens. The congressman affirmed that former President Joe Biden had given funds from the U.S. agency to Maria Corina Machado, leader of the extreme right-wing opposition, to promote fascist actions in the context of the July 28th elections. He pointed out that this was not a recent operation, but one that had been going on for years, financing assassinations, human trafficking, and the payment of media and journalists to distort the image of the country.
So that this operation would have taken place where any Spanish citizen knew the name of the president of Venezuela and said Nicolas Maduro, but had no idea who the president of Portugal was, nor had any idea of the name of the Italian prime minister. She often did not know the name of the president of her community, but she did know about Nicolas Maduro. So that all this psychological operation of hatred against the process of change that has taken place in Venezuela has been generated. So that all this psychological warfare has been generated, which led together with the economic sanctions, which is, let's say, a real substrate. And the issue of the psychological warfare was what generated the issue of Venezuelan migration.
And the Venezuelan government has dismantled the network of internal smugglers known as coyotes and arrested 3 members of the gang who were trying to destabilize the country. During the program Sin Truco ni Mañas, without tricks or gimmicks, the Minister of the Interior, Justice and Peace, Diosdado Cabello, said that the extreme right wing is trying to sow a campaign of fear and insecurity among young people. Cabello pointed out that part of the funding for this operation came from the United States Agency for International Development. He also reaffirmed the dismantling of the Oro operation and indicated that the third aspect was the kidnapping of Magistrate Michael Moreno.
We dismantled this operation, which had a third side, which was the kidnapping of Magistrate Michael Moreno, kidnapping him and selling him. That is the term they used, to sell him, as a kidnapper does, a kidnapper who sells merchandise, and they offered $300,000 to each one of those who participated in the operation.
And the seminar del Discurso de Angostura el Libro Azul was held in Caracas on the occasion of the commemoration of the 206th anniversary of the installation of the Angostura Congress in 1819, promoted by the liberator Simón Bolívar. Our colleague Leonardo Rieta with the details.
The headquarters of the Venezuelan Foreign Ministry was the epicenter of the meeting of historians, journalists, and political leaders, in which they discussed the influence of the independence vision of the liberator Simón Bolívar and Commander Hugo Chavez for the construction of a social model of justice and equality, principles that will guide the next constitutional reform to be promoted by the Venezuelan government.
This is a very important forum, especially at a time when the President of the Republic, Nicolas Maduro, has announced a proposal for constitutional reform.
Primero porque es el análisis de 2 documentos fundacionales de precisamente
First, because in an analysis of the founding documents of precisely the Republic of the year 19 with Bolivar, and this Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela with Commander Hugo Chavez.
República Bolivariana de Venezuela con el comandante Hugo Chávez.
We are seeing in this year 2025 how the communal power has become precisely that tool of equality, of direct democracy that in the future will transform the country. And with the constitutional reform, we will see precisely that equality practiced, that we already live it, but that more and more will be seen with this reform.
cada vez más con esta nueva reforma.
And it is indeed something very important in our country that equality is a constitutional letter.
La igualdad es letra constitucional.
El libertador Simón Bolívar y el comandante
The liberator Bolivar and Commander Chavez had the objective of ratifying the defense of sovereignty before any type of foreign interference.
Si había un punto que era innegociable para Bolívar,
if there was a point that was non-negotiable for Bolivar within his perspective and his vision, it was independence.
se podía transar en otras cosas, pero la
He could compromise on other things, but independence was sacred. Independence or nothing, said the liberator. The same with Chavez, independence to be able to open everything else. So at the end, he sometimes said goodbye to the Venezuelan people, telling them that they had a country because they were independent.
Hoy tenemos patria porque somos independientes.
El papel de las mujeres fue vital en
The
la
role
lucha.
of women was vital in the struggle for independence, and now in the construction of the Bolivarian Revolution.
Es importante retomar el hilo.
It is important to take up again the socio-pedagogical thread of Simón Rodríguez,
El que en verdad colocó la piedra fundacional.
who was the one who really laid the foundation stone of feminism in Venezuela, because his pedagogy, his socio-pedagogical architecture to refound the state in decolonizing terms breaks the rationality of the notion of superior and inferior races imposed by Spanish colonialism.
Que el coloniaje español impone.
En las conclusiones, los voceros del seminario
In
coinciden
the conclusions, the seminar spokespersons agree on the importance of transforming the state through the proposal of a constitutional reform to strengthen popular power in its communal projects.
Sobre la arquitectura de un nuevo Estado.
This Congress is about the architecture of a new state, about a state where popular power is the epicenter and the form of development, where there is no difference between the state and a mediating civil society and a people far away, but where the people are the tool and the fundamental building in the construction of this state.
En la construcción de ese Estado.
el Congreso de Angostura de 1819.
The Congress of Angostura of 1819 was fundamental for the construction of the Republic, and in the Blue Book of Commander Hugo Chavez, it is the continuation of the policies of social inclusion for the strengthening of the nation.
En la Cámara de Marcos da Silva, Leonardo Urrieta, telesur, Caracas, Venezuela.
We now have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at telesur English. We'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Colombian government issues new taxes to address the humanitarian crisis in the Catatumbo region in northeast of the country. Our colleague Hernán Tobar with the report.
El gobierno colombiano días atrás decretó el estado de conmoción.
The Colombian government decreed a state of internal commotion following the humanitarian crisis in the Catatumbo region. In the last hours of this February 14th, it issued a decree enabling the creation of taxes on online games, oil companies, and notary publics to address emergency measures to deal with this situation.
When there
are supervening events of manifest emergency calamities or events like these, the state must intervene and finance them from the general budget of the nation. Which in this opportunity is greatly compromised in a budgetary inflexibility because the amounts of the future that the governments have left us for 185, 3 million, 60% of which are attributable to Duque, means that there is no budgetary space to make changes within the budget. So it is very important that there is a source of funding in the decrees of commotion in order to alleviate the very serious situation in Catatumbo.
Para los analistas, estas opciones de atender
For
económicamente.
analysts, these options to economically address the situation in Catatumbo are generated by the majority of the opposition benches, which were against the approval of the financing law proposed by the government, an action considered as a boycott to the social policies promoted by President Gustavo Petro.
Both the tax on chance, hydrocarbons, and notaries are highly technical taxes in that they are levied on rentier sectors of the economy and not on productive sectors. Moreover, they have a clear component of progressivity in that they will be paid proportionally by those who have more resources, something that is a constitutional mandate that is generally not fulfilled in Colombia. This is expected to raise 1 billion pesos this year, which should be sufficient for the problems in Catatumbo.
El decreto de conmoción interior fue
The decree of internal commotion was signed by the Colombian government in response to the humanitarian and security crisis in the Catatumbo region, Department of Norte de Santander, where clashes and attacks between National Liberation Army, guerrilla blocks, and former Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia dissidents have left more than 50,000 people displaced and 20,000 confined. In this context, these taxes will be implemented to guarantee public order and economic stability in the region, and to promote social and humanitarian assistance programs.
Por supuesto que una inyección de nuevos recursos a esta zona.
Of course, it is an injection of new resources to this zone because they are very important as long as they obey the action plan that must be agreed upon with the communities.
Con las comunidades. Si eso se hace por fuera
If this is done outside the traditional organizations of the territory, outside the wishes of the people, then surely these resources will not have the impact we want in the construction of peace.
impacten de la manera que queremos en la construcción de paz.
Según el ministro de Hacienda, Diego Guevara,
According to the Minister of Finance and Public Credit of Colombia, Diego Guevara, these taxes will be extended until December and stated that a new tax reform containing the 3 taxes on a permanent basis will be presented.
Hernán Darío Tobar Gaitán, teleSUR, Bogotá, Colombia.
In Palestine, the town of Han Yunis, a large deployment of military fighters prepared for the prisoner exchange between Israel and Hamas. The military wing of Hamas and the military wing of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad deployed for the exchange in Han Yunis, where previous swaps have taken place. Palestinian prisoners are being freed after the release of 3 Israeli captives in Gaza under the ceasefire agreement. Appearing in good physical condition, Alexander Trufanov, Sagi Dekelchen, and Yair Hon were handed over. A total of 369 Palestinians are expected to be released this Saturday. In addition, Hamas says it expects indirect negotiations with Israel on the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire agreement to begin next week. And amid escalating violence in the West Bank, Israeli settlers attacked Palestinians in Bethlehem, injuring at least 15. Palestinian news agency reported that the settlers physically assaulted Palestinians in the Al-Maniya desert east of Bethlehem using sticks, rifle butts, and tear gas canisters. The attack injured 15 members of one family. The Israeli settlers also set fire to 2 vehicles, vandalized several others, and destroyed solar panels, tents, and barracks in the area. Clashes also broke out in Nablus between Israeli forces and local residents. Israeli forces raided the town, and a young man was reportedly abducted during the clashes. In other news, Ethiopia hosts the 38th African Union Summit focusing on reparations for historical injustices. African leaders and international guests arrived in the capital city, Addis Ababa, to discuss strategies to boost development and strengthen ties in the region. Among the bloc's main challenges is to find a solution to the insecurity crisis facing the Democratic Republic of the Congo. In this context, this Saturday, Angolan President João Lourenço assumed the presidency of the alliance with the intention of solving the conflicts that the continent faces. And in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, residents flee Bukavu City due to the armed conflict in the east of the country. Local authorities report that the M23 rebel group and the Congo River Alliance took control of the Kavumu airport, 45 kilometers away from Bukavu. Authorities also warned that the residents of the city were forced to move due to the armed aggression and the absence of military forces in the region. Local media registered looting by M23 troops as well as several regional political leaders missing. We now have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel, teleSUR English, there you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back. Amhazia polling stations open as voters take part in the early presidential elections. The Central Electoral Commission reported that over 134,000 people are eligible to exercise their right to vote in some 152 polling stations. Electoral authorities said that the preliminary results will be announced on February 16th. The elections take place after Parliament accepted President Aslan Sania's resignation in November. And the Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova on Friday denied that Russia was responsible for the drone attack on the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. She made it clear that the accusation that was a provocation organized by Kiev to blackmail the West into providing it with more aid while the meeting was being held in Munich to discuss the war in Ukraine. Zakharova further stated that Kiev regime's attacks on nuclear facilities and their use as an element of blackmail in the international arena are exactly what should be a topic of discussion at the Munich conference, since it is devoted to security issues in Europe. And following a powerful storm in Southern California, mudslides and flooding have affected areas along the Pacific Coast Highway in Topanga and Malibu. The storm, which brought the heaviest rainfall of the winter, prompted flash flooding warnings for areas including Malibu, Topanga State Park, and Pacific Palisades. The storm season has moved out of Los Angeles area, but the risk of mudslides and rockslides remains. Evacuation orders were in effect until Friday afternoon for areas near the Palace, Sunset, and Hearst fires. By early Friday morning, at least 16,000 customers were without power in Los Angeles, Ventura, and Santa Barbara counties. And on Friday, a fire broke out at the Chiltern Firehouse, a luxury hotel and celebrity hotspot in London, forcing the evacuation of around 100 people. The London Fire Brigade responded to the incident, sending around 125 firefighters and 20 fire engines to the scene in Chiltern Street, Marylebone. Fire crews from Euston, Soho, Paddington, West Hampstead, Kingston, and Chelsea were also called. The fire was located in ductwork running from the ground floor to the roof of the 4-story building, which houses a restaurant on the ground floor. Firefighters remain at the scene to extinguish hotspots. The cause of the fire is currently under investigation. Unfortunately, no injuries have been reported. In Italy, Rome's Galleria Borghese is offering an unusual Valentine's Day experience, taking visitors on a journey of love through art inspired by the goddess Venus. The event, named the Goddess of Love, 1,000 Faces of Venus, features the statue of Pauline Borghese by Antonio Canova, representing Napoleon Bonaparte's younger sister in the guise of a victorious Venus, and the so-called Cabinet of the Venuses, a room where most of the paintings represent Venus and stories related to her myth. For a few days until February 16th, visitors will be able to immerse themselves in the experience. The Galleria Borghese houses one of the most important art collections in the world. It includes ancient Greek and Roman sculptures, bas-reliefs, and mosaics, as well as paintings and sculptures from the 15th to the 19th century.
On the occasion of the days dedicated to the Feast of St. Valentine's Day, the Galleria Borghese has organized these insights on Venus, the goddess of love and beauty, starting from the 2 rooms where she is the protagonist, like here. The room dedicated to Venus Victrix, Latin for Venus Victorious, where we see Antonio Canova's sculpture of Pauline Bonaparte Borghese in the guise of not just any other Venus, but of a victorious Venus.
Yeah, so the guide was telling us about how the statue was meant to embody Venerean romantic love. But there was also another side to the story, the real side, which is that Paulina was actually in Rome to get married to someone she did not love for very political reasons. So I think that contrast of the story with the reality of it is very...
Like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. So join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.